Danielle Wood, welcome to 7:30 and congratulations.
Thank you, Sarah, and thanks for having me.
Now, the Treasurer published a statement of expectations for the Productivity Commission. It includes advising on digital transformation, net zero transformation, the ageing population, rising demand for care, and number 5, global risks and fragmentation. I would dearly love to know what your KPIs are for a job like this, but seriously, how do you develop the institution across such a broad range of areas?
Look, it certainly is a fairly ambitious plan that's been set out, and I in no way shy away from that. I think those are some of the really big burning policy issues that are facing this country. The way we go about it is we've got a fantastic group of very eager staff. They are expert researchers and analysts. We have a really strong set of processes around consultation, around transparency of the way we work, and all of that feeds into providing what I hope is really excellent policy advice to government on those big issues. Now,
for the first time, as I said, we've got a statement of expectations from the government. Is the government trying to take control of the Commission's output for political purposes?
No, that is not at all the way that I interpret the statement of expectations. So many independent statutory agencies like the Commission have this type of statement. This is the first time we have had one at the Productivity Commission. But what is sitting there, I think, is a statement of the fact that the government very much values the Commission's work and they want it to be as relevant and impactful as possible. Nothing in there compromises our independence in any way. Independence, the ability for us to say what we think the right policy decisions are without fear or favour is, really fundamental to the Commission's DNA, and there is certainly nothing in there or no conversation I've had that would suggest that we would behave any other way.
One of the expectations is around consultation. Do you welcome the expectation that you will have to consult unions about your research and conclusions?
The Commission already has, very broad-ranging consultation as part of its standard process. So in any policy issue that we're looking at, if we're doing a public inquiry, we will go out to all sorts of relevant groups. So, we would already be talking to unions, we'll be talking to business, we'll be talking to consumer groups, we'll be talking to Indigenous leaders. To me, that is just doing our job. And we take a community-wide perspective, so we need to be hearing voices from all different groups across the community.
Now, as recently as last year, the Productivity Commission found that multi-employer bargaining could diminish productivity, and also found that unions had unbalanced bargaining power at ports. Are you going to have to backtrack from those positions if the unions now have a bigger say, a bigger contribution to your work?
Not in any way. So, we will continue to engage on the big policy questions of the day that we're asked to look at. We will listen to unions as we will listen to many other groups and come out with what we think the right answers are for the community of Australia as a whole. So nothing in the way we operate or the types of recommendations that we make is fundamentally changed by this statement.
Let me just ask you this, though. What's the purpose of the government asking you to consult more with the unions, except to give a win to a Labor government?
From memory, that reference to the unions also includes reference to many other different types of groups. So I think, all the government is saying is they want us to be active in our consultation program, talking to different groups in the economy, and that is exactly what we have done and exactly what we will continue to do.
Now, the warning in the intergenerational report this year was that unless we lift productivity in Australia, we'll be 40% poorer in 40 years. That means earning less and working longer. Now, that seems counterintuitive in an age of digital transformation. What's going on?
Look, it's a really great question, and that is based on the fact, really, that productivity growth over the last decade has been considerably slower than it has over the previous 6 decades. What's going on is partly that that technological change has yet to deliver the big economic dividends that we might expect that it would have. There's certainly potential, and we think we can see lots of opportunities for digital transformation to drive productivity growth going forward. The other really big challenge that we face, just as every other industrialised nation faces, is the shift in activities in our economy. Over time, we've become a lot more of a services economy. About 80% of our economic output, 90% of jobs are in the services sector, and those have been areas where it's just been harder to get productivity gains. So that's going to be a big focus of the Commission's work.
So which are the sectors, in fact, that have the capacity to drive growth in productivity? Certainly we would hope that technology and digitisation would be quite broad in its impacts, but, there is a lot of potential, I think, in areas like education and health. When you are a services-driven economy, your human capital, your education system really matters for your long-term economic outputs, and we certainly think there's lots of opportunities, both in technology but also process and policy improvements in that space to shift the dial. Health, obviously, huge opportunities in terms of new technologies and the way we can do things. So those are a couple of the big sectors that we'll be thinking about. And what about business? What role do they have? Because in that decade of very low productivity that you identified between the GFC and COVID, there was a certain torpor in business investment in Australia. How do you change that from the position that you're in?
Look, it's a really important point, and overall the economy was just a lot less dynamic. So we had less business investment, we had fewer people changing jobs, we had less new businesses being started. So we need to look at that overall environment. So the sort of settings, the regulatory settings, the tax settings are all relevant to that, but also what happens within business itself. And I think we should make the point, this is not all just about government. Australian businesses actually sit behind the best practice management frontier. We're often quite slow to adopt new technologies within business. And so, we actually need to see a sort of shift in mindset within business, as well as, making sure the policy settings are in the right place.
It's a very interesting point that you make, that we're behind that frontier, we're not leading. But how do you actually change that? How do you change a mindset when it's lagging in the way that it is?
Look, it's partly a cultural shift, I think, and it's shifting capacity within business. So my point really is that this can't all be on government. Government has a number of really important levers. Productivity is so central that it needs to be focused on it, but it's also going to be what's happening in the private sector that's going to make a difference.
Now, of course, there's an enormous focus on interest rates at the moment, and we heard Phil Lowe, when he was Reserve Bank Governor, talking about the Productivity Commission, talking about the importance of lifting productivity in Australia. Can we get inflation under control without a boost to productivity?
Well, ultimately, the reason we need productivity growth is that's what's going to grow our real living standards. So the central bank is absolutely right to focus on that. What we want is wages growth, but wages growth underpinned by productivity, because that in the long run is what's going to make all of us better off. So it absolutely needs to be there.
Now, and just a question about aged care, because I think when a lot of people think about productivity, the Productivity Commission, they think about doing more, doing better, doing things more efficiently. But where does aged care fit into your ambition for the Productivity Commission?
So look, I think, when we think about productivity, we can often see the big improvements that have come in areas like agriculture or manufacturing. When we think about the care sector, it's much harder to think, what does a productivity improvement look like? Labour is the product. None of us want to be cared for by robots. So the simple fact is that productivity gains will be harder to come by in those sectors, but that doesn't mean they're not there. We'll probably be looking at things that try and raise the quality of care that people receive. So the extent that new technologies might allow people to tap into greater connections or do things that stem cognitive decline, there are opportunities to improve people's quality of life that I think come from new technologies and also come from setting up policy in that space better. I'm
going to finish on a personal question. Are you personally productive?
I certainly think I am. I get a fair bit done within my day, but I guess others will be the judge of that.
Danielle Wood, congratulations again. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about productivity in the months ahead. Thank you.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Sarah.